Hello, and welcome to episode 22 of the Silver and Black Coffee Hour, the Tiago Splitter episode. I'm excited. I hope you guys are. Just dunk it if you're 6'11". I love you, Tiago, but that's the thing that always jumped out to me.
I thought he had a good layup package.
He had a great layup package. And he made it work. Aaron Blackerby, do you have a favorite Tiago Splitter
moment?
Yeah.
I went to the 2014 finals. I went to the only game that we lost in that series in San Antonio. I went to the game after the AC breaking, so it was game 2. I was very excited. I paid $250 to sit in the nosebleediest seats possible.
$250 for finals. What a decade it's been.
Yeah, that's not bad.
There are decades where centuries happen.
I remember that, and I remember just being up against the wall, and we got there super early, and we were watching warm-ups, and it was like an enlightening moment for me because I saw Tiago Splitter shooting threes and draining them, and I was just like, these guys all have a lot of time on their hands. Like, this guy is not asked to do this once in his career.
Can you imagine if that happened in a finals game, Tiago Splitter shooting a three?
Like, just so wild to kind of see that. So that's my favorite Tiago Splitter memory. And then we got Mr. Zach Montana. What's your favorite Tiago Splitter memory?
Well, it involves Boris Diaw in, I think, game 3, game 4 of the finals, one of the two. Boris Diaw is doing a nice little back down on D-Wade. They got a double with Chris Bosh. And what does Boris do? A nice little behind the back pass to Tiago. Good little dunk on the baseline. That's my favorite memory because we won the championship.
And a wonderful coaching career since for Tiago Splitter. Love you, Tiago.
He's on the Houston Rockets now, though, so
it's all right. We'll forgive him. It's all family. It's all Spurs family. He's part of the coffee gang.
It's all love.
It's all love.
It's
There
all
we go.
love.
Right. There we go.
And before we had a couple of rough Spurs basketball games that raised some big questions about this team in recent days. We'll get into all of that. I do want to start, though, with remembering a couple of people who definitely had some favorite Tiago Splitter memories of their own. The Spurs fan community lost a couple of mainstays and important people to all of us. So Felipe Aldape, the number shut up guy.
le gusta de este parade?
No me shut up, man. No me. Go Spurs, go.
Always a joy if you ever got the opportunity to see him out at, Fiesta or wherever. And he loved being that guy, And I think what a beautiful encapsulation of what it is to be a diehard Spurs fan. And then also Sylvia Laureano, known to many simply as the Spurs lady. Genuinely bled silver and black, super fan, always at everything. I was, looking today, and Raul from the Associated Press had a video from 2018 when she had just recovered from a heart attack, stood up out of her wheelchair to bang the drum to get the second half started. Go Spurs, go! So, Sylvia, rest in peace. It was lovely to meet you. What a wonderful Spurs fan community we have. So thoughts to you guys and your family. And apologies for the down mood, but it doesn't get much rosier from here. We've got to start with the news that the Spurs game on Saturday in Los Angeles against the Lakers postponed due to the devastating wildfires out there, which is really tough. JJ Redick, coach of the Lakers, lost his home, as have many people. People have died. It is displacing thousands of folks out there. So, our hearts go out to you, Los Angeles.
Yeah, and we'll have in the show notes a couple of places that we have found for donations to be sent. I think in situations like this, I know in the past I've had how much is worth it or whatever. Like in situations like this, any and all help is good. If you have friends, family, relatives, obviously hope y'all are already checking in on them. There's a number of also GoFundMes out there. The only thing that I'd also ask with this, obviously, we found 3, once again, the Pasadena Humane Society Mutual Aid LA and the LA Fire Department Foundation. These are ones that we thought were causes to donate to. There's more out there. My only encouragement with this sort of situation and in a situation like this is look for sources that put money as directly in people's hands as quickly as possible. So I just highly encourage that. And we'll transition from, obviously a pretty somber topic, and we're recording this on Sunday morning. We're still not sure about Monday as well, but we are going to transition to some Spurs basketball. We're going to talk about last week's week, and then, get into our typical segments of high praise and questions we have from the week, and do a little preview into next week. So pretty standard business practices here. And last episode, we talked about our New Year's resolutions, and our own Zach Montana had quite the New Year's resolution, and the Spurs decided to cosmically say, "Hey, Zach, we want to test you on this." So, Zach, what was your New Year's resolution again, and how are you doing with it?
It was to be less emotional after Spurs losses or wins. We got to put both in there. I didn't get to test the win theory out this week. But
how was the losing?
It is on the job training. Is what the Spurs are getting me right now. It is. I have nothing but.
Your degree didn't prepare you for this.
No, it did not, which is fine. It's all about learning and living, and so I'm doing that right now. I will say that this week, some awful losses, bad fourth quarter performances, but my mindset and my New Year's resolution is still intact, and I have made it. I have had some negative tweets, but my mindset is still very good with what this team is doing.
Hey, man, that's great, because the second week of January is known as National Quitting Week.
So call the second Friday Quitting Friday. I will make it to that point. Trust me.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, obviously this week, from just a basketball perspective, was pretty rough stuff. And I'm at least going to have a theme. I'll say this ahead of time with my takes, is that in times like this, and even to Zach's resolution, the only way for this team is through. Mm-hmm. There is no around. There is no behind. Like, it is through. And we're still seeing, not meaning to trigger anybody here, learning experiences is at least how I'll call them. So with that being said, we'll jump into Monday.
You know what? Hold on. I just want to take a second on learning experience.
Sure.
I don't think... I feel like that's become an association, right, that people have. Young team... learning mistakes. I think everybody makes learning mistakes until they stop learning, which hopefully is the last thing they do, right? I think that old people can learn. I think that old basketball players can learn, and I think young basketball players have to. So let's not make learning a dirty thing. Although it did send a chill down my spine when you said it like that, just because I knew it hit a particular, know.
So you're saying you can teach an old dog new tricks.
And I'm saying that learning and growth is a continual process, or at least it should be.
Hey, I completely agree from that on a just fundamental level of life. And I believe that with the Spurs team as well. And so we'll get into it. With Monday night, last Monday, we had our easiest game of the month against the Chicago Bulls.
Was it?
And man, we did really good in this game of playing for 47 minutes of keeping the lead. There's a problem, though. Games are at least 48 minutes. And
for the most part, yeah.
The Spurs were leading up until the 47th minute and went away. And so, say some of the stars of the game were Wemby. He did still ball out a bit. Chris Paul did his best to keep us in it. Mm-hmm. And I saw a really interesting stat from Michael C. Wright during this game. In the third quarter, Wemby became the first person in the NBA this season with 100 threes, 100 blocks, and 100 assists. Pretty sweet stat, which is great, but I just want these to translate more to dubs. So, fellas, what thoughts do y'all have on this game?
Well, that stunk. at the end there. Like, this was coming off a game where they couldn't close against Denver, right? Blowing a 12-point lead to the Denver Nuggets with Nikola Jokic, yeah, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, big dog. Just, like, that's life.
Yeah.
Blowing a 19-point lead to this Bulls team, nope. Don't like that. Don't like that at all. Wemby, good game. And it's crazy to say that when he had like 23, 14, and 8 blocks. Good game for the kid. But I need a little in the fourth quarter of a game where your team is leading, thanks in large part to your effort. And like, I love his ability to pull and threaten anytime. I need a little less Peacock and a little more boa constrictor at that point in games like that. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Elaborate more.
I need more discerning shot selection. I need more, pounding the rock in a very literal sense and dribble the air out of it a little bit and get a great shot. Work for great shots. Don't settle for bad ones. I think his shot selection was a big part of why this became one of the most disappointing losses of the season. And I say one of because they have had a couple of bad ones. And I was just on this show last week saying, it's been 3 weeks since they had a stinker. Stinker alert. Incredibly loud, incorrect buzzer.
What about you, Zach? How you feeling about this one?
We had talked about the rotations last episode and how to use Wemby and whatnot. I think Mitch had he threw a little wrench in the normal rotation. Left Wemby out there until about the 6-minute mark in the fourth quarter. Pulled him and didn't put him back into the 3-minute mark, which I feel like it threw maybe a little rhythm that Wemby had going on. I feel like you got to throw him back in there and the game was getting so tight at that point where it's like, we need you now. And Chris Paul had been taking over the game at that point. It just was a weird combination of what was going on. Also, it goes back to, we mentioned the last 2 blown leads. They've scored 16 and 15 points in those fourth quarters. That's not great. Over the last 3 games, they're the league worst in fourth quarter scoring, 19 points a game. That's never going to win you a basketball game.
Damn, 19 in the quarter?
Yeah, that's not great basketball. You're always going to be behind the 8 ball. That's kind of the way I took it. The Bulls made a great substitution, bringing Lonzo Ball in and put him on Chris Paul towards the end of the game with 3 minutes to go. That was also a big switch up of what they were doing because Chris Paul was playing great and kind of leading them to the promised land.
When Wemby was out of the game.
Yes.
Wemby checked out, Bassey came in, Chris Paul said, all right, bet. And on 3 consecutive possessions, it was like 1 minute and 10 seconds of game time. He was like, pick and roll, switch on Vooch, elbow jumper. Pick and roll, switch on Vooch, wing jumper. Pick and roll, 3 in your eye hole. And that was like, with Wemby looking as gassed as he's looked in recent games, I was like, that's a formula for success for surviving the Wemby-less minutes, at least on offense.
Yeah.
If Chris Paul can do that.
The thing, like, for this one, for me, that was most disappointing was I really thought that the game in Denver that we won was, like, the breakthrough that we've been talking about them needing.
Felt like it.
It really did, right? And then to come back and do this in a game where, like, they were up by 19 at one point. All 5 starters were in double-digit points. But the thing is, you go and you look at the box score.
It wasn't great.
They're all in double digits, but it's like 10, 11 points. Like, it's not like who else on the team had 18 points or something like that.
Efficiency was not very good in this one.
Yeah, Chris Paul had 18 points. Everybody else had... Harrison Barnes had 10. Jeremy Sohan had 11. Devin Vassell had 11. Keldon had 11. Stephon Castle had 11. And Julian Champagny had 12.
Yeah.
Like... That is, like, ethical basketball, of course, but, like, we need someone else to be another 20-point scorer at least on this team. So, I mean, y'all have anything else to add to the Bulls game?
It felt like a last year loss, and I mean that as that should sting as much as it probably does for anybody who watched Spurs basketball.
Yeah,
it felt like one of those losses that was going to linger. That one of those ones that they just couldn't flush, and I think we got a good indicator of that on Wednesday.
Yeah, well, that's a good transition. We played against the Milwaukee Bucks, and I mean, speaking of games that I honestly felt like last year, this one for me was with just like, I don't know if it was a hangover from the Chicago game. I was pumped about this game. Also, especially watching the Cavs and Thunder game beforehand, I was like, that game was awesome.
Sick.
This next game is also going to be awesome based on my own personal hype meter. And then having Giannis and Wemby again, like a battle. And, you know, one of those two took that assignment very personally. And the Spurs in this game, I thought, came out with a lack of energy and physicality. And the Bucks were bombing away from three. They were at 50% from the floor in the first half. Never really let up. There was kind of similar to the Bulls game, time in the second half where Chris Paul was like, okay, I'm going to start chucking some things, and they were going in. Wemby had, once again, two of the coolest plays ever with a one-legged three to open it up, and then he had that crazy spin, didn't even go off the backboard, just hits the bottom of the net
Teardrop.
on Giannis,
Ooh.
and then decided not really to... But well, I don't. He didn't decide, but there was not much else to be done from that.
I think Giannis and the Bucks did a lot of deciding for Wemby and the Spurs in this game.
Yeah.
As stinky as this was to watch from a Spurs perspective, you kind of got to tip your cap to Milwaukee and the level of intensity that they brought in this one, which I think was, it would have been a tall order to beat that team on that night, even if the Spurs came out with matching energy, right? And they did not. They came out flat. And in addition to coming out flat, the shooting was bad. And the Bucks shot great and had guys just like Brook Lopez, 5 of 11 from 3 in this game. The Bucks had 4 guys with 4 made threes. The Spurs, that was just Chris Paul, who was 5 of 6, which is great. Go Chris Paul. But yeah, man, this was a tough one. I really think that Wemby's both, and these are related things, right? His fatigue level and his lack of a serviceable backup, both kind of. This game was the end result of that. And
Yeah.
especially down the stretch where it was just like they had nothing. This was his lowest scoring performance since like October.
Yeah.
With 10 points in this game. And yeah. But credit Giannis though. That guy is, and he had a play in this game that was almost like his block in the finals.
Mm-hmm.
What a special player. What a special matchup for years to come. Giannis got this one by a lot, though.
Well, Zach, hold on. So, of these two games, which one tested your New Year's resolution the most?
Definitely the Chicago game.
Okay.
You can't blow leads like that in the fourth quarter.
This
2
one
games
was
in a
pretty
row.
emotionally ready to be set in for a loss.
I knew what it was in the first half.
But you called the Chicago one, too.
I said they're going to bullshit around.
You said on the last show, you were like, I feel like for whatever... You had a bad feeling about
They're
it.
going to bullshit around. I said it. They're going to... And the Spurs shot 52 3-point attempts in this game. Which tells me that the Bucks were not allowing anything in the lane, and almost like they read the scouting report. Spurs are going to shoot a lot of threes. They're probably not going to make a lot of them. They shoot a lot, but their field goal percentage isn't great from there. They're not like the best shooting team in the league. So it's almost like, yeah, we'll make the others beat us.
Only 30 points in the paint for the Spurs in this game.
Right, and so we'll make the others beat us. We'll make the other, Wemby's not going to kill us. We'll let Chris Paul kill us. We'll let Julian Champagne shoot threes. We'll let Keldon Johnson go off. Because as long as it's not Wemby, then he's not getting others involved.
Yeah, I mean, this too, there was actually a really cool offensive play that I saw in the Chicago game, and I was like, oh, like that's a new wrinkle I hadn't seen. Chris Paul brought the ball up, and it was with Wemby and Stephon Castle. I thought it was a super cool play. Wemby comes down on to the corner, sets a pick for Stephon Castle. Stephon Castle cuts And then what Stephon Castle does is he actually rotates into Wemby's guy to set a pick. And that's actually the action for Chris Paul to pass and have like an open lane for a layup. And I was like, man, what a beautiful play call. I don't think I've seen the Spurs do that all this whole season. Like, that's amazing. And then I see this Bucks game, and I keep going like, is there an offensive play call happening right now? Is there like the offense just looks so stagnant? Like, it's one thing sometimes to even lose with a lack of energy, but like to kind of go out there and just like not have a full-on strategy for things is rough stuff, to say the least. On top of, we didn't have Jeremy Sohan in these games, as he's recuperating from that back strain, which we could already tell was limiting him even when he was playing.
He was in that Bulls game, but not as effective as he has been. And so
appreciate the correction.
No, you're good. I just had the thing up. And this also, I think, is like Spurs 18-19 now. Only 2.5 games back of the Lakers in 6, but like there's so much density in that, play and race.
There's a surging Kings team. There is whatever the hell the Suns are or aren't doing. There is still a Clippers team in there. Like the path forward. We got the Warriors in there, and we got the T-Wolves. I mean, once again, y'all, like
the West is tough.
The only way is through with this sort of thing. So
this is the first time in about a month that the Spurs, a month exactly, that the Spurs have been below 500, and like there's a ladder, but there's also a cliff edge, and they got to be real careful here.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, let's lighten the mood up a little bit. Let's go to high praise.
Hallelujah!
All right. Welcome to High Praise.
We're back.
We returned.
Insert ad here.
Right.
And in this section, despite not so much like the doom and gloom, but we are always looking for the silver linings, the positives, the areas of growth that we're seeing. And Zach, I'll let you kick off High Praise for us. What in the midst of a rough week as well as some postponement, what do you got for us?
I'm a fan of what they're doing on the defensive end for the most part. They're holding their top 6 in NBA teams' opponent shooting field goal percentage. So they're playing good defense. They're contesting well. It's a make or miss league, so you can account that to teams making certain days and missing certain days. I do enjoy what I'm seeing on the defensive end, not perimeter wise. It seems like they're forcing everything to the paint and letting Wemby do his thing, which is, we talked about, it's a blessing and a curse. I feel like teams or players on the team can be like, oh, we got Wemby back there, and it's gonna make things easier for me. I'm just gonna let them go down there, and they're gonna keep moving. But the team defense has been good this year for holding opponents shooting field goal percentage. I mean, they're top 5, top 6. It's a good place to be in. Now you got to get your offense to come along with that to balance that out. You're getting stops on the defensive end. Now you got to start putting the ball in the hoop.
I think that we've talked about it all year about the funnel, right? The funnel to Wemby. And to carry that metaphor, I think the funnel just needs to be a bit bigger with less holes in it, because, man, get him down to Wemby, and it's the same way people used to talk about Timmy and D-Rob. It's like, yeah, go say hi to my friend down there, best of luck. But if nobody's there to escort them, then it gets to be
it's
a
like that
problem.
Bucks game where, once again, like they were spraying us all from the 3-point line in that game, and I was just like, yeah, I know Brook Lopez is 35 feet out, but like he has so many highlights where like that is clearly his comfortability spot on that wing.
Yeah.
Like, go step out on him. Like, have Brook Lopez drive on you. I guarantee you're gonna catch up to him. The man's 35. Like he's not going to just close the lane down.
Just goes to what the Bucks did well on Wednesday night. They really spaced the Spurs out. So many shooters on the floor. I think that was a big eye opener for me to see just like the difference in roster.
Right.
I texted you about
the Cavs game, man. I was watching the Cavs and I was like, I would take Dean Wade. I would take Gorgeous Yang.
Right.
I would take Max Strus. Like, I was like watching all those dudes out there in that game. I mean, same with the Thunder. Like, they've done an excellent job. Where I look at both those teams and I'm like, these guys would fit on any team in the league, and they're just like found the right gel there.
The team defense has improved, and I think noticeably so. The communication is better. The connection is better. Is it perfect? No. But it is. There's definitely growth happening here.
To go to your final point about Cleveland and Milwaukee, just the roster difference. Those two teams shoot the best. They're the best 3-point shooting teams in the league, and I think that's just where you get kind of a. You can just tell a difference when you watch those games, and you can see, oh, they're not concerned about passing to this person or this person or this person because they're all very consistent in what they do.
Yeah, I mean, OKC last year they had 3 players that were 40% 3-point shooters. That's kind of a trend there. I will give my high praise myself to Mitch Johnson.
Okay.
And look, once again, he is going through the fire. There are so many things that are just out of his control, including like being the interim coach of this team. And, you know, regardless of if he's the Spurs like future coach or if he is going to get a job somewhere else, I definitely think he does. And like, I see that he does from a game to game, like add new wrinkles to the game. I think, like, I just actually got this stat from Spurs Muse earlier this week. First 30 games, Mitch Johnson is 16-14. The Pop, foundation of the franchise, obviously, he was 9-21. So during this time, once again, like the only way for everyone on this team, and that includes from the front office on down to the players, the coaches in between, is through. Right. The only way Mitch Johnson is going to get the experience is by going through the experience he's having right now. He's going to lose some games. We saw in the 76ers game where, why didn't you put in another big to get that rebound at the end to like secure it? Next time he was in that situation with the Timberwolves, he made a switch to a big there. Like, he's doing the little things, but like, you can't until you are calling the shots, until you are in those situations, until you are on the road, until you have people behind you, like calling you the worst things possible, people yelling at you, talking shit the whole time. You don't get that experience until you're in that experience as a coach. And he's not a player where like there can be a physical way of like taking out that anger. Like as a coach, you kind of like have to take it and then be like, oh man, like this sideline out of bounds play is really gonna fuck with them now. Like, right. Like that's your vengeance at the end of the day. So
you can be as angry as a chess player can.
Yeah. You know? It's so it's one of those things where like I got to give him daps during this time because Pop gone. Now they're dealing with like crazy fires in LA, like an unknown there, and I think he is finding his voice within this as well.
It's been a lot of weirdness this season that Mitch Johnson has had to contend with off the court. It's been tumultuous even for a like emergency interim head coach gig, right? So I think he definitely deserves some props for that. And you said he's not a player. He's not a player anymore. But we saw a very fun photo on the broadcast of a very young Mitch Johnson as the Stanford point guard with Brook Lopez and Russ and Kevin Love at UCLA at the time, I think. What a photo. Good find, whoever found that in the archives. But so he was on the guys like, hey, or maybe...
Can you imagine being a point guard with the Lopez brothers in college? Oh my God, that had to be like so funny and annoying at the same time.
But the thing is, back then, he didn't have that 3-ball. He shot like 12 his first, whatever. It's some crazy stat that the first, 8 years of his career, he shot like 12 threes, and now he's like one of the best and most accurate 3-point shooters. Forget about his size. So maybe Mitch's scouting report was just locked in college. I don't know.
Who knows?
But yeah, man, he's in a tough spot. I've seen some criticism for some of the game management stuff, but like I think overall he's doing, like you said, a very good job of making adjustments and pushing. I think he pushes the right buttons more than he pushes the wrong ones.
Yeah, like no team's going 82-0. Like losses are going to happen, obviously. Like,
right.
even with Pop, like Pop has had non-energy games. I would love him to see doing a vintage Pop where he's like, "Oh, all 5 of y'all don't want to play. Peace." Like,
Would have loved to see that on Wednesday.
Yeah, like Mamu, get out there. Like, just send the point to everyone. Like, do a little hockey, substitution there. So
I have, and I've mentioned this before, but I have really liked his timing on timeouts. Like
he's getting a lot better.
Every time I see like if a little run happening where I'm like, ooh, that was a particularly bad one. The whistle's happening, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, he's
Shout
good.
out Mitch Johnson.
What do you got?
I've got to give some high praise to Chris Paul. And I thought about him. One of my resolutions is to read more. So I got to this part of Vonnegut's
Show the book. Show the book.
Read it. It's if you've ever wondered like how could a book written like 10 years before we got to the moon be relevant today about technology? Read this book. It's great.
And now we go to a reading of Kurt Vonnegut's The Sirens of Titan, as read by our very own Tom Petrini.
When a man in a modern army is broken from field grade to private, it is likely that he will be old for a private, and that his comrades in arms, once they get used to the fact that he isn't an officer anymore, will, out of respect for his failing legs, eyes, and wind, call him something like Pops, Gramps, or Unc. The third man in the 2nd Squad of the 1st Platoon of the 2nd Company in the 3rd Battalion of the 2nd Regiment of the 1st Martian Assault Infantry Division was called Unc. Unc was 40 years old. Unc was a well-made man, a light heavyweight. Chris Paul, man. Shout out to Unc.
Shout out to Unc.
18 points is the second highest scoring total of his tenure as the Spurs. He did it in consecutive games. He did it in fashion that made you say, oh yeah, I remember how inevitable those jumpers feel when he is doing it to you.
Also his three, how he kind of just launches it. I'm like, oh right, like you just throw it, but it also goes in.
That's the most frustrating thing about it to opponents.
Yeah.
It has to be.
Yeah.
That it looks like some shenanigans when it's going up. And it just thwaps. And boy, I mean,
he had one of those breakaway threes on the wing, I think in the Chicago game, where I was like one, I don't think people realize how difficult, like, running at full speed, jump stopping, catching the ball, shooting it is hard.
Yeah.
And that 3-point line is far away. So to, like, do that still at, like, his age with that, man, he was cooking.
And, I mean, we saw it in that Bulls game, right? When he went hunting, when Wemby went to the bench and Unk picked up his rifle and said, okay, I'm dotting you here and here and here. I'm running the same play 3 times, 3 different ways. You know, buckets 3 ways. He was serving buckets 3 ways.
Yeah.
On Vooch. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, he can still get to his spot and mess up your day like the old guy at the Y that is just unstoppable. And we always talk about him, coach on the floor, right? Assist man for Wemby, and everybody else. This guy can still get buckets in the guts of a close game against the best wing defender on the other team. Still do it.
He's crushing it.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to our next segment because questions that we have coming up for this week. And fellas, just something personally about me. When I am in a doubtful situation, when I'm stuck in the muck of my thoughts, I tend to get existential. I tend to go, what does it all mean? What is actually happening here? And so when we have 2 losses and we're on a three game losing skid, I'm having to zoom out for myself and say, there are maybe some bigger questions for us to ask. And I kind of have 2 that I prompted you guys with. Okay. The second one is more of like a expectation setting question. And this first question is kind of a problem with the fact that I'm even having to ask it. But here's the question. Who is the second best player on this team?
Yeah.
It should be number 24. It is number 3 at the moment.
Hey, we have
Devin
a Zach
Vassell.
pounding the table moment. You know this shit's important.
Yeah.
It should be Devin Vassell. I think there's like no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Right now it's Chris Paul, and I can just the eye test tells me that when games are in crunch time, they're looking for number 3.
Yeah, well, and earlier this season, we thought, especially the way Wemby got out of the blocks, that Jeremy was our most consistent player, if not our second best player. And then don't forget, Harrison Barnes won Western Conference Player of the Week when Wemby was out. So, yeah, Tom, I mean, what do you got on this?
And you mentioned Barnes. Barnes is the only Spur in the rotation over 40% from 3. That's bad. Like, that's rough.
And you have the Cleveland team who everyone shoots 40% or above. So it's tough when you look at that.
Right.
Yeah.
And, Champagny having a nice season from deep. Chris Paul's been pretty accurate, but, like, it's been the spacing has not been great. The precision has not been great from outside. And that's something, when Aaron posed this question and I started looking into it and I was like, okay, so where has Devin been falling short? It's a weird one, man, because he's averaging 15 a game. Spurs have 7 guys other than Wemby averaging basically between 10 and 15 points, if you count Chris Paul at like 9.6 points per game.
We round up in this household.
For sure, me too. And for the purposes of this discussion, absolutely.
Yeah.
But Devin Vassell is averaging 15 a game, the highest of those others, 43% from the floor and 34% from 3, which is below league average. And the really rough thing here, the really confusing thing, is the easy shots are the ones that he's missing. I guess you could take that both ways, right? You could be like, man, he's missing these easy shots, but I guess on the good side of that is he should be making those shots, and it's funky that he's missing them. But
he's also purposely creating difficult shots for himself,
Right.
multiple times. And I don't know if that's a habit he got used to last season, because he was one of the best difficult shot creators, shot makers last
They
year.
had him like an A+ rating in the scoring.
I mean, so this is just weird.
But chew on these for a second, because it's like he's 32% on catch and shoot threes, which should be bread and butter stuff. 36% when pulling up, lower volume on the pull-ups. 32% when he's classified as open or wide open. 39% when he's classified as tight or very tightly guarded. In the eternal words of one Kenan Thompson, ooh-wee, what's up with that? Like what is up with that? Genuinely, I don't get it. But it is having a bad impact on the Spurs as a team when he's out there, and I don't even know how this is mathematically possible, but like he is the biggest overall like total minus for the Spurs this season, even with limited playing time.
Yeah.
And a considerable amount of overlap with Wemby, who is leading the team.
It's one of those things where, I mean, we've had a little more time off between games, and I'm kind of looking at like the Minnesota Timberwolves here. Like they started getting on a hot streak by putting Dante DiVincenzo into the starting lineup, and like when I'm looking at their games now, I'm wondering if this is just like a mentality of like Devin Vassell. Maybe your destiny is to be awesome sixth man, the next anointed like Manu on the team, because like. When I look at, like, and you replace that with, like, Julian Champagny in his spot. Because when I look at Julian, no matter when he's coming in the game, starting, not coming off the bench, the man is ready to shoot darts from 3. And he's pretty damn consistent, especially in the last 10 games. I told y'all before we started the show, he's shooting at about 41% from 3 in the last 10. Like, he's good to go wherever he is. He seems very locked in and understanding of, like, his position. What I'm trying to figure out with Devin Vassell is, he's getting enough shots to get his buckets, and he is a shooter. Like, I think the numbers will eventually come up, but like from last year to this year, again, like his biggest question has been about consistency for that. And, he's getting paid the most on the team and should effectively, once again, be the second best player on this team. But kind of the point of the question is like the problem.
Right.
So,
like you said, the fact that the question exists is the problem. And let's talk about Sohan for a second because I know people talk about his fit with Wemby. I think, with the 3-point shooting, it's not as horrible as he's improved in over the course of the year. He's up to 28%, improving up to 28%. But he's getting some more confidence at least. The form still looks wonky, but
shooting a lot less threes than last year. I would say when the volume has gone down on that number. I'm not even looking it up and just off eye test. I think the most threes he shot in a game is either 3 or 4 this season so far. So he's getting maybe 1 or 2 shots from that area, and
right,
they're usually pretty wide open.
Mm-hmm. He's shooting 69% in the restricted area.
That's pretty good,
and 27% out of it is the problem. So if with that clear a deficiency on offense everywhere else, I don't think you can possibly say that he is the second best player on the team, even though he is defending really well. Sohan and Wemby together as a pair, according to NBA lineups data, is about net even. Mm-hmm. With Devin, it's a negative pretty strongly, although Devin has been sort of a negative pretty strongly everywhere. Mm-hmm. Just how the numbers are playing out, but it does seem to the watching the game does seem to match the spreadsheet on this, which brings us back to Chris Paul, like you said, Zach.
No, it's looking at these plus minus because you brought it up. The game they won in Denver by 3, he was at minus 18.
Vassell
was. I mean, that's just mind blowing to me, and they won by 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's stuff that like genuinely I'm confused on how that's even mathematically possible.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm looking at what minus 18. We're okay, and then the game they lost in overtime is minus 12, and it went to overtime.
Yeah.
The game they lost to Chicago, they minus 5. They lost by 4.
So Chris Paul, he's averaging 9.6 points, 8 assists, 36% from 3. He's a bit of a target on defense. He's still pesky. He's still stubborn. Net on, plus 4.2. Net off, minus 8.3. About a third of Wemby's baskets this season have come off of an assist from Chris Paul, and half of his threes come after a Chris Paul pass. So he's making everything easier for everybody else, although it hasn't really borne out in the results for everybody else as well. So I think it is Chris Paul at this juncture, which is concerning because he is Unk. And Unk isn't going to be here getting buckets forever.
Nope.
So, yeah.
Well, kind of as we're moving to temporal things, I'll bring up kind of our next question here. And part of why I bring this up is because the expectations, obviously, this season have been raised with the play of this team. And with that being said, though, I really wanted to zoom out and kind of look over the last 5 NBA champions and see where we're in, where we are in our journey of championship contention. The reason I do the last 5 is starting in 2019, we've had a new NBA champion every year since then. It's, I don't want to say it's the end of the dynasty era. Who knows, if and when that might come back again. But all that being said, there's been 5 different NBA champions. And so there's a couple of easy indicators with this to first and foremost see. Offensive rating and defensive rating. If you're in the top 10 for both of those, you're probably a championship contender. If you're top 5 in both of those, you're probably winning the championship. Very easy. Second thing, though, and this is where we always talk about age. We talk about the youth of this team. We talk about those sorts of things. And so I wanted to just look, when did these stars, when did these MVPs actually go to the NBA finals and win? And what I pulled over the last 5 NBA champions, their overall roster age was between 26 and 28 years old. The Denver Nuggets were the youngest at 26. The last 5 finals MVPs all made their first appearance around season 8, with the exception of LeBron, who made it to his first finals appearance in his 4th season. With the exception of the last 2 champions in the Nuggets and Celtics, the rosters also do typically skew older, with 6+ players on their roster being 30 years or older. We don't have that. The league also as a whole is starting to skew younger as well. So these numbers might eventually like come down even further. But all that being said, when I look at this, is that things take time.
Right.
Even with having, I would say, the next generational superstar in Wemby, LeBron in the 2007 finals, he was swept by the Spurs, but that was his first time. And remember, he got there with Zadrunas Ilgauskas and
Boobie
Gibson and
Eric Snow.
yeah, I mean, he got there essentially on will alone, and Wemby might, but he does also have a tougher road going through the Western Conference with that sort of thing. So all that being said, is like I kind of asked this question for us to kind of step back, further enjoy the journey of growth. Once again, the only way through this is through. There's no getting around it. There's no shortcuts. We have a lot of things that we need to have answered for this team. So with that being said, I'll kind of leave it up to y'all on where y'all are.
You go first.
With this.
I feel like this question is so much harder to answer because there's a Wemby, right? You talked about LeBron as the outlier there.
Yeah.
Right? And truly, we don't know, as ridiculous as his growth trajectory already is, how much is he going to grow? How much are the Spurs going to accelerate this in, future years? How aggressive are they going to be in pursuing assets? And I think the nature of some of their assets, I personally believe, makes it more likely that they will be more aggressive, and they will have to be more aggressive in pursuing the team because you can't just take on a whole bunch of teenagers.
I mean, dude,
right?
look at look at this season compared to last season. And when we were in the off season talking about the acquisition of Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes, we were like pretty marginal.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and for what we deemed as a marginal, win, like we're still, in the playoff hunt. We're 18 and 19 right now.
I wouldn't use the word marginal. I would use it as like this is a bridge though.
Right.
It's definitely
That's a good way.
It's definitely it's not the core that's going to carry this team to the next championship, but it might be the bridge to the place where that happens,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's designed to be that, in fact. And so I think that when the Spurs, not if, but when the Spurs get a clear-cut all-star level second star, then that's when we start to talk about, okay, the window to this being a guaranteed playoff team, a team that nobody wants to see in a playoff series, that I think is a star and a serviceable backup center away.
Pedal to the metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, once that happens.
It's hard to tell with such a stacked West right now. I know it's aging a little bit, but I do think there's a lot of good teams in the West that are still young and still powerful.
OKC.
Right. So talking championship right now, it just seems so far off, and I think that's a good indicator to me, like where the Spurs are. Just based off,
just use this, during wins and losses,
right?
Just like have this little mantra. Where are we on this path?
Tom said it. Every great team has two great players. You can go look at the Lakers, two great players. You can go look at the Suns, they have three great players. You can go look at the Bucks, two great players. You can go look at the Knicks, two great players. You go look at any team that's Celtics, great players. Denver, great players. Dallas, great. We're talking any great basketball team has two stars. I mean, it's simple as that, and I think we get to the point where the last subject we talked about was how does this team improve, or like the point guard position, letting Wemby score a lot more points this season.
Mm-hmm.
I think the team gets better when they improve the point guard position to an all-star level caliber player. I think that is just... Wemby is not a point guard as much as he loves having the ball in his hand. Wemby is a bigger guy, and I think on Wednesday we saw a good indicator of what happens when they get up in his skin. Okay, when a team does that, point guard's got to take over. I mean, it's just simple as that. We don't have anyone to rely on right now. I do think that, you mentioned it, the assets this team has does give me like hope that they can, and they have the opportunity to improve the roster.
Totally.
And it's not like their hands are tied behind their back and there's no way out. I think there's so many ways out with this team. Trades, draft capital, things that they have to in the future, which they built the
movable
future for.
contracts.
And they could have they're on track to have 3 first-round picks this season. Does anybody think they're going to
They're not going to
sign 3 first-round rookies
Well,
this year?
use
I don't think so.
last draft as
not.
a great great just judgment on what they're going to do. I think we're getting to the point where they're done with the bringing in a bunch of young players and seeing where they fit. We have too many young players on the team right now, and we're having trouble fitting them in. Whereas you bring in 2 veterans, Chris Paul, Harrison Barnes, and they fit in perfectly. And I think that goes back to what I was saying. You're saying that a point guard on this team, it's the bridge. Okay, we get an idea of what happens when you have a point guard with running out on juice with no legs and what him and Wemby can do together.
You show the next all-star that comes in, hey, the way that Chris Paul ran this with Wemby, run it a million times like this.
So, yes, I think it's hard for me to say championship. And that sucks as a fan to be like, oh, I don't know. But I'm not like the world's ending because they also have a road out of where they're at right now.
Exactly. It's not. And with that being said, let's talk about upcoming week. Before this, we usually go into where the Spurs rate. And fellas, lo and behold, we are not really moving from many of our ratings. We are 17th in net rating, 18th in offensive rating, defensive rating is 13th, and our 3-point shooting percentage is at 23rd. This week, we'll see about Monday. I assume we'll probably get an idea later this afternoon if the game is happening or not.
A quick update to this. We did get in the middle of editing this that the game on Monday with the Lakers is happening. So just wanted to insert that here. Thanks.
The plan at the moment is to still play the Lakers. Their net rating is at 20th. Their offensive rating is at 11th. Their defensive rating is at 23rd. And their 3-point shooting percentage is at 20th. So seeing those numbers, I'm like, wow, statistically, it looks like we got a shot here. What do you guys think?
The boys have had a week off, really, 5 days to get the legs back under them. That's a blessing or a curse when it comes to basketball with rhythm. I personally think that I said the other day that they're going to get one in LA. This is the one they're getting in LA if they play.
Right.
Yeah, I think the guys, especially Wemby, needed to get their legs under them. I think they also needed to get their minds right. And as challenging as what's happening in Los Angeles is right now, I think it is also one of those things that sort of drives home one of Popovich's mantras, which is that there's other stuff out there that's more important than basketball, and so whatever you're going through on the court, remember that it is fun. It is an escape. It is something that should be joyful. And it should be a centering thing. So I'm very interested to see how the Spurs respond to the time off and the situation that they're in. But I do think that they're gonna come out because they'll have had a week to let this last week leave a bad taste in their mouth basketball wise. And watch the tape and come out with some adjustments. So I think they come out ready.
Yeah, I hope so too. They are playing against a dude who really knows how to compartmentalize in LeBron. They're playing against a coach who also, he said as much in his little media spree the other day. He knows how to compartmentalize. JJ Redick as a player at Duke got death threats for him and his family. And for all that being said, the dude seems fairly well adjusted for having to go through that. So this is one of those moments where maybe, once again, from a basketball perspective, like, we can sneak in one. It's also another one where, I could totally see the Lakers just like, I just need a way to exercise the stress. Yeah. And the Lakers or the Spurs are my victim for that. So we'll see. But then we come back to San Antonio on Wednesday and Friday against the Memphis Grizzlies. Boy, howdy. This is going to be an interesting little baseball series we got here. Memphis right now, net rating at 4. Offensive rating, they're 6th in the league. Defensive rating at 4th as well. And shooting, and they're in their top 10, or they're 10th in the league in 3-point shooting percentage. So, Jaren Jackson Jr., Ja Morant coming to town.
They're top 3 in points, rebounds, assists, and blocks per game. Top 5 in field goal percentage. The other night against the Timberwolves, Ja Morant on the game-winning shot moved in a way with Ant Edwards guarding him and taking it personal, Ja moved with a arrhythmic fluidity and overall grace and creativity that like I was quite certain I've never seen anybody do that on a basketball court before and hit that shot to win that game. Absolutely tremendous juggernaut Memphis team.
He looks like that anti-gravity propulsion device that these Americans are trying to invent these days.
I watched it 6 times. I was like, that doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Yeah,
Like,
they're good.
Tough matchup.
They're a great. I think they're the sleeper team in the West, 100% with what they do, with what they have, the roster they have. A great team. I think they're very well built. They built it from the ground up. Got to give credit where credit's due to Memphis. I despise Memphis as a team, but I got to, once again, you got to tip your cap and say y'all built it. Y'all found great players to build this thing around. I think Wemby has a little chip on his shoulder. I don't want to get into too much about it. I know that was your thing as well. It's just going to be a fun matchup. I don't think they win either game.
Interesting, yeah. I mean, the other guy to watch out in this game for, outside of the usual heavy hitters of Desmond Bane and John Morant and Triple J, Jalen Wells, their rookie. There are some saying that he is now climbing the rookie ladder for Rookie of the Year as he held Anthony Edwards last night to 4 of 13 shooting.
Okay.
Dude is defending his ass off and shooting it well from 3. You know, I'm hoping we, split this series with them. Both games at home. So we know the Spurs do play better at home in the first place. So I'm, like I said, I'm going to take a split on that. But this will be a really fun game. We know John Morant's going to try and put Wemby on a poster. He has tried to do it last year. He's going to try and do it again this year for sure. Then our last game, the team right now in the league that I'd say has the most drama going for itself. We will be at the Miami Heat next Sunday. The Heat right now ranked 11th in net rating, 15th in offensive rating, and 11th in defensive rating, and they are also 10th in the league from 3-point shooting. So I guess they're shooting the same as the Grizzlies there. So Zach, what do you got on this one?
This is my must-win game of the month, actually. This is a cup final for me. This is a must-win. I'm putting all my marbles in one basket, and we're going to try to win this game because then we're off to France to play some games in Paris, which would be fun. So you get a little 4-day break. But this, for me, is a must-win game. Reason being, because the must-win game. This whole week is tough. I think this is a game that you can look to and say, okay, it's a 2 p.m. game in Miami. We're not going to be out late the night before. We have no choice because we got to be at the arena by 11 o'clock. So the boys won't be out getting in the clubs. They might stay the night. Probably not because they're getting to Paris. This is a must-win. Focus on basketball. We're here to beat your ass and go play in Paris.
And if you're right, they'll be on a 5-game skid at this point. If they drop,
well, we're not gonna do that.
But
it is gonna be that is gonna make it even more must win.
You know what I'm saying? Like this could be
the make or breaker.
Last chance to grab the rope.
Yeah.
Type.
Yep.
Game.
The Spurs have. I saw the stat. They're traveling 20,000 miles this month.
Yeah,
that's a lot of travel. I don't know how many y'all put in air miles.
Before the rodeo road trip.
Yeah.
This for me is a Cup NBA Game 7 finals game.
And they need to treat it as such because, yes, there is drama with this Heat team, with Jimmy Butler making his displeasure and desire to go to any of the 29 other teams known. But this is still a 500 team, even with that, even with him suspended.
3 games above 500 as of this recording. They're good.
They're a good basketball team. There are a lot of good basketball teams in this league, even in the Eastern Conference. Even when their star player says, "I'm out."
Heat culture, like
the grittiest, no nonsensist. Pat Riley is.
Jovic. I mean, that dude, like, finally coming on. He was kind of a project when they drafted him a few years back. Tyler Hero finally answering the bell as the star that they wanted for the team. Interesting though, Bam Adebayo is not having his best offensive year this year. It seems like his shot has kind of dropped off. But here's the other thing that maybe is in the Spurs' favor. This will be the second game Jimmy Butler is back from his suspension, whether or not they find a trade destination for him or not. And knowing Jimmy Butler and his pettiness, could just be a chaos agent for the Spurs in this game.
He's
in
with
the first
us.
Place. So
Yeah, he's with us.
Or
The worst thing to hear.
it could go the other way.
It's-
It could go the exact opposite way, where he's like, you know what? I'm not passing it to anybody. I'm putting up 63 on 50 shots, and it's going down to the wire.
He is actually playing well this year, despite his age and despite the shenanigans off the court. Like, he's still Jimmy Butler out there, and he's always someone who's had a stubbornness to him that works. So that being said, let's talk about just real quick to end this here. Predictions for next week. Zach, what you got?
If they play the Lakers game tomorrow, I think they go 2-2.
2-2. Tom.
I think 2-2. I don't think they win the Lakers game. I think they split with Memphis because it's hard for anybody to win 2 of those games. And I think that they take care of business against them.
That'd be a big win if they grab a win against Memphis.
Tell you what, fellas, I'm joining you on the 500 train for the week. Last week, I let my optimism get the best of me, saying 3-1. This week, I'm going 2-2. I don't know where the 2 happens, but I'm just thinking 2-2.
It feels like an optimistic 2-2, though. If I'm being straight
1000%.
up, like,
yeah,
I'm hoping it's 2-2.
We're being homers right now.
We've never strayed away from being the optimistic Spurs podcast.
For sure.
And we're not starting today.
Yeah.
But with that being said, final sign off. What you got,
Tom? Much love to the folks out in California, man. Be good to one another. There's a lot of badness in the world, but always look for the helpers. And shout out to all of the brave first responders out there. Appreciate you guys.
Just be safe and enjoy your week. Don't get in too much trouble.
Yeah. Take care of each other, y'all. Go Spurs, go. And
Nombre, shut up. Go Spurs, go.
And have a great week. We'll see y'all next week. Peace.